What's up, Christ-centered mental health community? This is me, David Lee Chu Sarche, with my co-host Joseph McDermott. This is our weekly episode of Christian Schizo Rants, where two Christians with schizophrenia rant about different topics. Before we get started on this interview, I have a quick announcement for those of you that are new to the channel. Please check out the Christ-centered mental health ministry website. It's www.christcenteredmentalhealth.net. There you can see our statement of faith. You can have access to the On Faith and Mental Health blog. You can check out the Christ Centered Mental Health Ministry bookstore. You can find out how to contact me or someone on the ministry team for 24-hour peer support. And you can find out how to support the ministry via Patreon, Venmo, or Cash App. All right. How you doing today, Joe?
I'm very good.
It's good. Do you have any pressing topics that you want to talk about first?
Um, Not at the moment. I'm still waiting for my income tax check to come in, and once I do, I should get my marriage plans resolved.
That's
And then
good. So
they said 8 weeks should be the maximum when it's gonna happen, and it's already been around that time, so it should be soon.
yeah, so everyone, please be in prayer for him that he can get that, because so they can get on with their wedding. Because as you know, they were planning on getting married in February, but it got pushed back. So, didn't you say you might get married in June?
Yeah.
That's what they're looking at now. Um. Anyway, so the first topic I wanted us to talk about is I wanted us to share some of our stories about being in juvenile detention because you and me have similar experiences, life experiences. So I wanted us to talk a little bit of because a lot of people don't know what it's like to be mentally ill in a juvenile detention center. So I wanted us to talk a little bit about our experiences. I'll
Well,
let you go first.
I'll go first. Okay.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I was very timid and shy, very awkward. I was kind of outgoing and sometimes, but I was always kind of like an outcast, right? And I was like went through my first depressions and stuff, but something happened along the lines of that. Like I snapped out of my depression. I started working out and I started becoming very fearless. I didn't find the Lord. It was kind of like a demonic fearless, so to speak.
Mm.
And I remember one day I went to my high school homecoming, even though I was already dropped out of school. Me and my friends decided to go there, and I started talking to these girls and stuff that I knew from the past. And then these cops started harassing my friends and when I noticed that, I went up to the police and they pushed one of my friends. And then I decided to join in the scuffle, pushed a cop. He went kind of flying, like he scraped up his legs and stuff. And he was wearing shorts. And then a whole bunch of them tackled me. And then I pretended to give up. And then as soon as they put me in cuffs, I mule kicked one behind me. Then they roughed me up again, and then I really gave up. And they put me in juvenile detention where I was in for about 2 weeks. And while I was in there, I spent my 17th birthday in there. And while I was there, I was in this one unit for 16 to 7. I think it was just 17 years old in this unit in juvenile detention. And it was my birthday. And one of them, there was one down the hall, and there was one in front of me. And everybody was saying happy birthday to me, the song. And then the guy down the hall was happy birthday, white boy. And then I was like, "Hey, f you, mother effer!" And this was before I found Christ, and I was pretty secular at the time, and I was like kind of in a wannabe gang banging kind of a mode. This was before I officially joined the gang. This was kind of when I fought the police. So, and then his cousin that was kind of like near me goes like, "Hey man, that's my cousin. Don't talk to him like that." And then I was like, "Oh yeah, well f you too, mother effer," and like, and So I had animosity not towards the guy who said called me white boy, but the guy who was like saying, oh, that's my family type of thing. We kind of like went back and forth, and one day he was walking by to get a toothbrush to wash his teeth, and I called him the F word, not the F word that means freaking, like the F word,
You mean like faggot?
but the one that's like homophobic, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
So I called him that. He said something back to me. I got right into his face, and then the staff had to separate us, and
yeah,
you know, so it was
yeah.
that's our deal. And then I got out. They put an ankle bracelet on me, and
Oh,
I
so
didn't care about the
you
ankle
were on
bracelet.
house arrest?
Yeah, I was on house arrest for a little while,
Oh,
and I didn't care. If a girl wanted to go out on a date with me or see me or something, I left anyways. I didn't care about the ankle bracelet. So
no,
eventually, since I was violating my probation, they got me again, and then I was in there for 4 months. And like the how the system works and where I was at is you're a white shirt if you're a bad kid, you're a blue shirt, which is the second worst, and then yellow is decent, and then red is what you want to be.
mm,
So since I was going to have a court date, I kind of made it a goal of myself to be on my best behavior and be a red shirt for the court, and I
yeah,
was, and that did kind of help me, have the because I could have been in juvenile till I was 18, but they let me out. And then I kind of they let me out after about 4 months. I was in there for about 4 months, and or 3 months maybe, and then I got depressed, and then see, because I was kind of in a manic state when I was in there, but after a while I kind of shut in, and like I wanted to kind of got suicidal, and then and didn't want to talk to anybody and stuff.
yeah, yeah. I kind of had an opposite experience because when I was younger, like in elementary school and middle school, I was unlike you. I was very social and I had a lot of friends and I got along with a lot of different types of people. But it wasn't when I got into high school that changed because my mental illness started to manifest itself. So I was pretty much like a loner because people were afraid to be around me because like there was times where I would hallucinate and see a giant fly with a human face chasing me down the halls, and people thought I was crazy. The only time people actually talked to me was when my foster dad would send me out with candy to sell it to people. But what happened, what got me in juvenile detention was okay. I was in foster. A lot of people already know this about me, but I was in foster care from 13 to 16, and when I was with my foster parents, when I was 15, DHS tried sending me out to my dad to see my biological dad, and I was living with him him and my brother for 3 months. But that didn't work out, so California sent me back to Colorado, and I went back to my foster parents. And they tried. My caseworker wanted to try and send me to my sister and her husband, and so, but they didn't want what happened with my dad to happen again. So they sent me to my sister on a 2 week trial period just to see how it works out. And after that 2 weeks, my sister and her husband told my caseworker that they didn't think it would work out. And I understand because they had kids at the time, and I was not a good kid at all. And they were afraid that I'd be a bad influence on their little ones.
Mm-hmm.
So they sent me. So when I found out that my sister and her husband said that I can't come stay with them, I started feeling very unloved, and I didn't think people wanted me. And like, I got the idea in my head. I don't even remember what exactly happened this night. I remember I walked. It was like in the middle of the night. I left my room and walked upstairs. I think I was gonna go look for a snack because I was hungry. But I ended up finding these matches, and all of a sudden I got this idea in my head that if I could do something heroic, maybe then people would love me. So I went downstairs with the matches, went into my room, struck the match, and threw it on my bed. And it caught the
Wow.
bed on fire. And I remember I was staring into the flames for like a good 2 minutes. I was like mesmerized by the flames. And then when I snapped out of it, I ran and woke up. I woke up my foster brother. I was sleeping on the couch because we had an argument. Well, he was my roommate. We had an argument a couple hours ago, and he wanted to. So he went to the couch to sleep on the couch to get away from me, and
Yeah.
I I went to wake him up, but for some reason I kept laughing. I was trying to tell him that there was a fire, but I kept laughing for some reason. So he didn't believe me. He thought I was just joking around. So then, since he didn't believe me, I went to my foster brother's neck in the next room next to me. I woke them up. I told them there was a fire, and at first they didn't believe me until they heard the smoke detector going off. So then they got up and ran and woke up my foster parents. And I went into the next room next to their room and woke up my foster brothers in there. And like eventually we all got out of the house. And what happened was I ended up having to get rushed to the ER because the EMT saw that I had smoke inhalation. And so they rushed me to the ER. And I remember when I was laying in the hospital bed, the fire marshal came in to talk to me, and like he asked me what happened. At first, I was like, no, I don't know what happened. I kept saying I don't know, and the fire marshal didn't believe me, and he was like, how do you not know what happened? I was like, I don't know. So then he brought my foster mom in, and he thought that she could talk me into being honest. So
Yeah.
he was like, he walked out, he walked out to let me talk to my foster mom, and my foster mom basically chewed me out and said, if you know what happened, you better tell the fire marshal the truth. And so when the fire marshal came back in, I told him that I tried to plug in a drop light so I could read at night, and the drop light sparked, and the spark hit my bed and caught the bed on fire.
Right.
And I thought, and the fire marshal, he like nodded his head and walked out. I thought that was the end of it.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward a little bit, I ended up in the Pueblo State Hospital. And I remember while I was there, the fire marshal and his partner came to visit me again with my caseworker there, and they interrogated me once more to try and get me to tell me the truth. And the female fire marshal was like, she was cruel, but she was upfront with me. She said, no one believes you that believes your story that a spark caused the fire. So be honest, tell us the truth. And they kept pressuring me. So eventually, I said, okay, I started the fire with a match. And after I said that, I remember that comment because the female fire marshal, she was like, she started lecturing me and saying only 5-year-olds play with fire. Like grown 16-year-old young men don't play with fire. Only 5-year-olds play with fire. And like I was like, but at that point I
Yeah,
was just
that's
like,
not true.
yeah. Well, at
I
that
know.
point I
I
was
know
like,
a six. Well, I know a 16-year-old that played with fire. You did. Like,
well, like at that time I didn't care what she had to say. I was like, whatever. And
yeah.
then the next thing I know, like the police, when I got discharged from the hospital, the police came to visit me. The police came and got me and put me in handcuffs and took me to Spring Creek Youth Services Center, which is the detention center in Colorado Springs. And I remember on the way there, I was scared out of my mind because I didn't know what juvenile detention was like. I thought it was gonna be like adult prison, and I was like, oh no, like. And I remember
No,
when I got there, like we came in through the back, and like the police brought me through the back door, and he had me sit down and wait for the staff member at the front desk to come and get me. And when they came and got me, he took me into the bathroom, and he told me to take off all my clothes. And I was like, take off all my clothes. I was kind of weirded out by that. But I listened. I was like, whatever. And I took my clothes off. Then he told me to turn around and squat, put my hands on the wall and squat and cough. And like that was like probably the most humiliating thing I ever experienced because it was so uncomfortable.
yeah.
And like he had me take a lice shower with lice shampoo, and then I put on the scrubs. And then they took me to this orientation pod called Tiger Pod, which was for the newcomers. And I remember when they took me to my cell, they gave me two sheets for the bed, and I was like, "Do I get a pillow?" And the guy, his name was Mister Roberts, and he was like, "This ain't the Holiday Inn." And I was like, "Whatever." Like, and then I remember like 2 days later, I was talking to this Asian staff member, and we were having a good conversation. It was going great. And then also out of nowhere, he was like, "Now don't think just because you're Asian and I'm Asian that I'm going to show you special treatment." And I was like, "What?" That thought never even crossed my mind. And but yeah, when I was in juvenile detention, I quickly realized that juvenile detention is a cakewalk. Like it was easy.
Yeah,
Nobody with me. Like it was pretty much a cakewalk. But
yeah.
I like I remember we were in the cafeteria and I was standing in line, and Mr. Logan, he was this really tall black man, and he was really strong. And I remember I was the first one in line, and he was kind of looking down on me, staring at me. And I looked up at him, and then he was like, "What are you in here for?" And I said, "Arson." And he started laughing, and he was like, "You crazy?" like, well, what happened was I was only in juvenile detention for like 2 months. What happened was my public defender, she got she was really good. Like she took me. She advocated for me and to the judge, to Magistrate Walters. She said this is his first offense. How if he pleads, she had me make a deal with the DA that if I plead guilty to first degree arson, then they'll transfer me to this residential treatment center and called Southern Peaks Regional Treatment Center in Canyon City, Colorado, and I'll only have to be there for 6 to 9 months. And all I have to do is to finish, complete the program there. They put me on 2 years of probation, and all I had to do was 100 hours of community service. So I got an easy deal, and but it turns out after I went to the treatment center, like I turned a 6 to 9 month program into a 2 year program. Like so I was in there from 16 to about 18 and a half. Like because I
Wow,
just
2 years?
yeah, 2.5 years because I kept
Wow.
like whenever I would get close to discharge, I would sabotage my discharge by doing something stupid like getting fight with the staff members or something. Like yeah, so I was in that treatment center the whole time I was on probation, and like and
Wow.
like that treatment center was like literal hell on earth, to be honest. Like it was like actually the first the the first couple months that I was there, I actually wanted to go back to Spring Creek because it was ridiculous. Like every Sunday, they would have a literal riot break out at that treatment center, like where all the kids would just freak out and start rioting, beating up the staff members, beating each other up. And like I was like, man, I want to go back to Spring Creek because there's more structure there. like like they actually called Sundays Psycho Sundays. That's how bad it got. And
My
then
goodness.
and then it was actually growing. The riots, like they started doing riots on Mondays, and they called Mondays Maniac Mondays. And then next thing I know, there was riots on Tuesdays, and they started calling Tuesdays Twisted Tuesdays. I thought it was going to become a riot every day of the week.
Yeah.
Like I was like, this
Well,
is insane.
they kind of have like a food day for every day of the week for tacos and wings and stuff. So I mean, that would have made
Yeah,
they would have
well,
had
it
that.
was like, but like the way the treatment center was run, like it was kind of like how you were talking about how you had different shirts, but at the treatment center it was called levels. You had level one, two, three, four, and five, and it was all based off of a point system. So as you go throughout your day, if you have good behavior, they give you a certain amount of points, and the points add up every day towards the next level. So like if you're on good behavior, you can advance in the levels, but then if you get high in the levels, if you have bad behavior, they can take away your points and you go down the levels. And like, I never made it past level four. Like, I had a level four status for a little while, and then a situation happened where this therapist I had named Dr. Robert Bell, he got a, like I trusted him wholeheartedly, and it turned out that he was a sex offender. Like it's a long story, but like he got arrested, and like after that I kind of got messed up in the head, and I ended up acting out, and I lost all my levels and went back down to level one, and I never actually recovered from that. Like I ended up the highest level I got after that, I got up to level two, and that's the highest I got. And they decided, since I was already 18 years old at the time, they decided, well, this is probably the best he's gonna get. So they decided to go ahead and discharge me, but they didn't
Yeah.
want me to go out into the street because I was institutionalized for so long. So they decided to send me to a group home like after discharge. And when I went to the group home, all I had to do was get a job, earn 15,000 $1,500, and get my GED, and then I'll move out on my own. And like it was kind of God's grace in my life that they did that, because they could have easily just put me out on the street and had me figure things out on my own. But
Yeah.
like yeah, like it was an insane time. Like that treatment center, like that treatment center was horrible. Um I remember there was a kid there named Travis Talent, and he was a bad kid. Like he was always getting in trouble and everything, causing ruckus for the staff. So one night he was getting in trouble with the staff, and I guess they were fed up with him. They picked him up, and like the school building in the classrooms had no cameras, so they carried him all the way across the field to the school building to one of the classrooms. And I don't know exactly what they did to him, but when he came back to the unit, his head was swollen. He had rug burns all over his face. He looked like they roughed him up badly. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, that is insane.
Was juvenile detention where they discovered you were mentally ill?
No, they discovered I was mentally ill when I was in the treatment center.
Okay.
Like what, like but they misdiagnosed me. They diagnosed me with bipolar
Yeah.
type two, like
Yeah.
because they thought I was depressed a lot. But really, I should have been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder back then, because at the time I was seeing a hallucination of a man named Tom, and he became like a good friend of mine, and like he would tell me to do things to get me in trouble, and I would listen to him because I felt like he was the only one that understood me. Like I remember one time he told me to go up to this one bigger kid than me and spit in his face. I did it. I spit in his face, and he didn't, like, before he could do anything to me, the staff like restrained him.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I was in my room and my therapist came to talk to me. And like Tom told me to tell him that I'm gonna rape his daughter and eat her flesh. And so I told him that, and my therapist got all like, I could tell my therapist got really angry. And like,
Uh,
but I didn't care at the time. I was like, whatever. Like I was listening to everything Tom told me to do. Like,
yeah.
but yeah, it was definitely an interesting time. I hated that treatment center with a passion.
Well,
But at the same time, as much as I hated that treatment center, there were specific godly Christian staff members there that really had a positive influence in my life. Like there was a couple people there. Like there was a woman named Miss Lynette Shipley. She was very motherly towards me. I actually looked to her like she was like my mom, and she would like get me books from the library so I'd have something to do, and like she was very motherly towards me. And then like there was a guy named Jerome Perkins who, whenever I would act up, he would grab me by my shirt and take me to my room and tell me to open the Bible to a chapter and verse. And so I would do it, and then he'd tell me to read it out loud. And like like at the time I was kind of irritated that he made me do it, but but through him doing that, it instilled in me a love for the Word of God. And
That's
like,
good.
yeah, there was other staff members that were godly influences in my life too. Like, so I do thank God for those staff members because they made the stay there a lot more bearable for me.
Yeah, I remember. I got diagnosed in juvenile detention. They thought I was bipolar 1, I believe, and
Oh,
but that was a
really?
misdiagnosis because like even though I never really auditory hallucinated or saw anything that wasn't there, I knew I was bipolar and ADD. I kind of had a hunch of that, but I also knew there was
Yeah.
something else there, and I couldn't
Yeah.
quite put my finger on it. I thought it might have been OCD or maybe PTSD, but it
When were
was
you?
really
When were you?
schizophrenia.
When were you first diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder?
20.
20. Yeah, I was first diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder like actually not too long ago. I think I was 31. I'm gonna be 36 in June. So about like when I was about 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. Like
Yeah, and
all like the whole before then, I just was diagnosed with bipolar type one, but I knew that there was something more because like I just had a feeling. But like so when I was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, I was like, oh, that makes sense now. But like
right.
I felt a sense of
Yeah.
relief. But like
Now, I kind of had a problem with my diagnosis, even though it's corrected, because when I hear the word schizophrenia, I automatically assume it's someone who hears things that aren't there. And even since I really never experienced that, I kind of felt like this in my head. And I'm not even joking. I was like, okay, these people think I'm worse than I really am. I'm gonna
yeah.
pretend like I am schizoaffective, so I'll get free money in the government. I won't have to work. Like I
So
was kind of delusional,
you thought you were pulling one over them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just a
That's
delusion in
like
my head.
one of the delusions I had happened when I was in the treatment center. It happened okay, so when I was first diagnosed in the treatment center with bipolar, I got intensely angry because because I didn't like that diagnosis because I know that my mother was mentally ill and I felt like God was punishing me because I don't know why I just felt like God was punishing me by making me like my mom. So
Mhm.
at first I got angry at my mom for giving me that disorder. But then my anger quickly moved from my mom. I ended up getting angry at God because I was like, God made me this way. I was thinking to myself, God must hate me. So I decided to hate him back. Like I never doubted God's existence, but I started to hate him. And I remember even at one time I was talking to this Satanist on my unit. I was trying to get him to tell me about Satanism. But then I was like, you know what? Satan's dumb because he's fighting against a god. He's fighting against someone he can't beat. So I was like, I'm not going to become a Satanist. I'm just going to beat God myself. And then that led me into a manic episode where I became delusional and started thinking I was the Antichrist. And
Yeah,
like I remember during that time, I would harass the Christian kids on my unit. I would go to the Bible studies every Wednesday night to harass the Bible study teacher. Like, and like
yeah.
I and then like that lasted the whole time. Even when I went into the group home, I was very anti-Christian. I was identifying as a bisexual because I felt like that was making God mad. And I was happy that I was making God mad. And
Hmm.
then in the group home, there was a staff member named Rick, and he was kind of I don't know how to say it. He was kind of mentally slow for a staff member. He was easily manipulative. Well, I can't say it. You could
It
easily
was
manipulate.
gullible.
No, you can easily manipulate him. But I
Right.
remember I called him to my room one night, and he came to my room, and I knew he kept a Bible in his back pocket, and I asked him, "Can I see your Bible?" And he pulled it out and handed it to me, And also, I had this sense of rage come over me, and I ripped up his Bible, spit in it, and threw it back in his face. And I said, "Get the f out of my room!"
Wow.
Like, yeah, like, and then
Yeah.
I remember also during that time there was a kid on our in the group home who was mentally slow, and I thought it would be funny if I could get him to snort crushed up bar soap. So I crushed up a bar soap, and I told the kid, "Hey, if you snort this line of soap, I'll give you $1." And
Ooh, what a deal.
well, he snorted a line of soap, and me and this kid Trey thought it was so funny. So I made an even bigger line of soap. I said, if you snort this line of soap, I'll give you another $1. And he
Wow.
snorted that line of soap. And then I was like, you know what? And I had the bright idea. I took him to the laundry room. I poured some laundry detergent in a line. I said, if you snort this laundry detergent, I'll give you $5.
Man.
Then he snorted the laundry detergent. I started cracking up. So I did give him the money, like, and then like I thought I got away with it until later on that day. He ended up his eye started turning really red. And I
Oh
like
man.
I was like I thought it was
Wow.
funny, but then the group home
Yeah.
director saw his eye and found out what we did, and he started yelling at me. And
Yeah.
my heart was so hardened at the time that I didn't care what he was saying. He was like, "You could have killed this kid, and you would go to prison," and blah 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 blah. But I just stared at him. I was like, "I don't care if I go to prison." Like, and when I had this stone face and I showed him no remorse, my group home director, he got kind of scared of me because I was essentially like a sociopath because I was not afraid to get in trouble for killing someone.
Well,
Like,
schizoaffective disorder is a psychotic disorder, is it not?
yeah, it is. But I
Yes.
remember even being in that group home, God was still trying to reach me because I remember it was so ironic during that period where I was thinking I was the Antichrist.
Yeah.
Like that group home was a former church, and so above the door was an outline of where the cross used to be, and then across the street there was an active church with a huge cross in the front lawn. So every day when I was walking in or out of the group home, I had to see the cross, and
Yeah.
it irritated me so much. I was like, because I knew at the time I knew God was trying to get my attention. Because I remember when Miss Lynette and my caseworker dropped me off at the group home, she pointed that out and she was like, "See, when you belong to God, He's going to do whatever it takes to reach you," and
Yeah.
that made me mad when she said that. Like I was
Yeah.
like, "Well, God's wasting His time on me because I hate Him." like,
Yeah.
like it was definitely a horrible time for me. I call that time in my life the dark ages of my life.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, you know what? It's interesting that we have two examples right here, two personal living testimonies that a hardened atheist that was a gang banging scumbag that hurt, that hurt people and went to jail and whatnot, and partied all the time. He can find Christ. Self-proclaimed antichrist that hurt people and did horrible things can be saved. If you want to look at a biblical example, look at Saul that turned into Paul. He
yeah,
can be saved. So
exactly.
never think that you've sinned so much that you can't possibly go to heaven because
Yeah.
Jesus died exactly for people like you.
By the way, Virgil Kane says, "Hey brothers, greetings from Manchester, England." Hey, thank you, Virgil Kane. Thank
How
you
you
for
doing,
joining the
Virgil?
stream. Like,
Amen.
thank you for joining the stream. Yeah, like you're right. Like as hardened as we were, God still reached us, and like God can reach anybody. Like, don't think
Amen.
that your sin is too great for you to be saved, because God can soften the heart of literally anyone.
Amen.
Yeah. Hold on, Virgil Kane. Oh, he posted a long post. He said, "Hey, from Manchester, England. I hope you are well. I am a simple, poor English farmer with 5,000 head dairy herd of cattle in Manchester city center. Anywho, last week I was checking on my bullocks with a giant cicada swept in and snatched my beloved cow Daisy. Hold on, is this for real? Like my best dare. I don't know. I'm not gonna read the rest of that. I don't know if this is for real. I think that's a troll. like, but yeah, like yeah, it's
I'm
definitely
sorry.
what.
That was pretty funny how you said that, but thank you. Cicada took a cow. Is that what he said? Like,
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like I don't get it. But yeah, God could literally reach anyone. Like even like one of the things I love about the Bible, like people have this misconception that the Bible was written by these holy people that never did anything wrong, and but that's not true. The Bible is written like Moses was a murderer, Abraham was a liar, like King David was a murderer and an adulterer. Peter denied Christ 3 times. Saul, like you said, Saul was murdering Christians, and he became Paul. So, like if you are a great sinner, like then you're in good company because all everyone who ever became a Christian was a great sinner at one time.
man,
And we even after you become a Christian, you're still gonna struggle with sin. Like I know Paul said he's the worst of sinners, but I think I'm the second. I'm second in line as being the worst of sinners because I sin every day. I'm definitely not a perfect Christian. Like I know like I sin every day. My thoughts and my deeds. Like I'm not like I'm if you were to take a if you were to go follow me around on a daily basis with a camera, you would see me do some horrendous things. Like, or if you're able to record my thoughts, you'll see that I have some horrible thoughts. Like, like in just this conversation you and me are having, we've been talking for like 38 minutes now. I probably sinned like 20 times in this conversation.
yeah. But this grace abounds so much that if
Exactly.
we
Where
Christian,
sin abounds, grace abounds all the more.
man,
Yeah, it's definitely. Virgil Kane said, I had a dream last night. I was crucified by President Joe Biden on the lawn of the White House. As the dark clouds gathered and lighting lit in the sky, I said, My father, why hast thou forsaken me? He responded, saying, You got yourself into that situation. Get yourself out. Any thoughts, guys? I don't understand what I don't get it. Like,
he's either trolling or he's pretty delusional, and he needs some help.
yeah,
Maybe.
I think that too. Either he's trolling us or he's delusional. Like I don't like, but yeah. Anyway, so um, is there anything else you want to talk about your juvenile detention experiences?
Um, I just want to congratulate ourselves on having our first troll. We're making the big times.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, I do. Like I remember one time when I was in the treatment center. Okay, so we had a graveyard staff, like the staff member that worked the graveyard shift while we were sleeping. Like, okay, so every morning when we first get woken up by the graveyard staff, we would have to do morning chores first thing in the morning before we go to the cafeteria for breakfast. And like I said, everything was based on a point system, and you could the maximum amount of points you can make was 250 in one day. And this staff member, before he would wake us up, he'd go around to different chore areas and do something to each chore to make sure we actually do our chores. Like he would take a permanent marker and mark up the back of the toilet. He would empty the hole puncher all over the hallway carpet. He would do things like that to the different chore areas. And when we first went, keep in mind, we're doing these chores when we first woke up. So we're still trying to get our bearings. And so we would do these chores and we wouldn't like exactly do them perfect because we're still waking up. And when we go and tell him we did our chore, he'll come check our chore. And if he saw the markings that were still there, he'll say, "I'm going to ask you one more time. Did you do your chore?" And if we say yes, he'll say, okay, I'm taking off 150 points for lying. And like you take off 150 points and we can only make 250, that's essentially ruining half our day. We would tend to give up at that because half our day is gone. And like he did that to this one kid, like named Enrique, and the kid got so mad that he walked over to the bathroom door, and the windows had the chicken wire in the windows, and he punched the glass window so hard that his fist went through the window with all the chicken wire and everything. And when he pulled his fist back out, like blood started squirting all over the place, and they had to like take him to the medical building to get it wrapped up and taken care of. But like I remember when I saw that, I was like, I understood why he got that mad because when you have a system that's based off of points and those points determine when you can discharge, anytime you get points taken off, that delays your discharge. So like and taking off 150 points like that, like I said, half your day is already gone. Like you end up losing your will to want to do good because your day is already essentially done. Like
Yeah, the thing about point systems like that, people that get hired for jobs like this, whether whatever institution it's at, like they're not known for being a nice person, so they can manipulate it and take advantage of that in a heartbeat. So
yeah,
it's not
no.
exactly fair.
I think
So
it's kind of funny because when I was in that treatment center, the staff members that everybody liked, I tended to dislike, but the staff members that everybody hated, I tended to because like I liked a lot of the Christian staff members because they're always good to me. But a lot of the Christian staff members were very by the book and they wouldn't bend the rules for the kids. So the kids hated them because they wouldn't bend the rules. But then the staff members that they liked were like the staff members that came from DOC, the Department of Corrections, and those staff members were willing to bend the rules and not really like they were willing to bend the rules for the kids, and so the kids loved them. Like there was one staff member named Big Dave, and I did not like him at all. Like he would come into the unit and right away, right when he would come on the unit, he would say, all right, everybody, we're going to do a GI party. And that meant we would have to do a deep clean of the entire unit. And like that would be the first thing he'd have us do right when he'd come on the unit. And I was like, oh, great. Like, this is horrible. But then, like,
why did kids like him for?
what? Because, like I said, he would bend the rules for the kids, and like I remember he would, like on the weekends he would bring in like his Xbox for the kids so the kids could play
Oh,
Halo. Yeah, so the kids could play Halo, and like one time he brought in the movie Soul Plane, which was illegal for him to do because at the treatment center we weren't allowed to watch anything above PG-13.
mhm.
But he brought in Soul Plane anyways, and like like it was ridiculous. Like he would like the kids liked the staff members that were willing to bend the rules, but they didn't like the Christian staff members because the Christian staff members were by the book and didn't want to bend the rules because Christians believe in submitting to authority.
Mhm.
Like
Right.
yeah, like it was kind of like I remember when I was in that treatment center, I used to get picked on a lot because I wasn't a big kid, and so a lot of the kids would pick on me, and like I had this reputation of always being honest because I didn't want to lie. And I remember one time, this one kid in the classroom, he did something. I don't remember what he did, but then the staff member came in and asked who did this, and like one of the other kids was like, "Ask David. He can't lie." And like so, the staff member asked me, and I pointed to the kid that did the thing, and like the staff member took off points from him and then left, and then the kid got mad and came walked up to me and punched me in my mouth. Like,
Wow.
yeah, like,
That's crazy.
yeah, it was ridiculous. Like, but yeah, like I hate it. That treatment center made me want to go back to Spring Creek so badly, because at least Spring Creek had structure. It was more put together. And I mean, granted, the treatment center when I was there, it was a brand new facility, so the staff were still learning how to do things, and they were still learning how to operate. I hope it's still around. I hope it got better over the years. But I wanted to go back to juvenile detention so badly because I got along better with the people in juvenile detention than I did with the people in the treatment center.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
I never. I was just about to say I never got arrested or in trouble after the age of 18, to my
Me
credits,
either.
and
Yeah, I never
so
after the age of 18, or when I moved out on my own at 19, I have never gotten in trouble with the law. Well, no, I take that back. Like a, like probably like 7 years ago when I was living in New Jersey with my ex, I did get in trouble with the law because I was stealing from Walmart. I stole DVDs and I stole a Blu-ray DVD player from Walmart, but I didn't get caught for those. I what happened was I kept stealing from these different stores and stuff, and when I got away with I got a little bit cocky, and so I remember we went to this grocery store called ShopRite, and I got so cocky that I thought I could steal a bag of shrimp, and I stuffed it in my sweatshirt like in front of me. And I thought I was just gonna be able to walk out of the store with this big bag of shrimp in my sweatshirt. And I got to the exit, and the security guard stopped me, and then he ended up calling the police, and I got handcuffed and taken to the police department. But thankfully, I didn't have to go to jail. Like the police officer just wrote me a summons to appear in court, and he let me go. So that other than that, I never got in trouble after the age of 19. Like I lived a pretty clean life.
yeah, me too. Like I after I got out of juvie, I did join a gang and did some illegal activities. Never got caught though. But when I got born again, around the age of it was around the end of 20, at the beginning of 21, around there. I got born again, and try to keep I even like have a problem with jaywalking. I see people in my city, and like old like senior citizens are jaywalking because they don't respect the law very much. But I don't even. I try to use the crosswalk every time because I've been hit by a car twice, so I try to be careful with the crossing the street now.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have a problem with jaywalking. Like I like the only time I really jaywalk is if I know there's no cars on the street. Like if I don't see a car for like miles, then I'll jaywalk pretty quickly. But
Oh yeah.
if it's a busy street, there's cars, then I'll take the crosswalk. But here in Toledo, sometimes even when you take the crosswalk, it's sometimes not safe even then because Toledo drivers they really don't care. Like either they don't care or they don't know how to drive because I know I've even when I take the crosswalk, there's been times where I almost got hit by a car. Even my wife, when she first moved out here, she told me when she took the crosswalk one time, she almost got hit by a car too. So like either Toledo drivers don't care or they don't know how to drive. It's one of those two things.
Right.
Like, but yeah, like I remember you told me one time that you almost got hit by an Uber, a driverless Uber car.
It wasn't an Uber. It was a Waymo.
Oh, Waymo, is that like Uber?
It's a driverless car that's in Phoenix, Arizona. I don't know if you have them, but
No, we don't have them.
yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Well, it's not funny. It's like horrible that happened, but like, yeah, like that's why I would never trust a driverless car. Like if I ordered an Uber and a driverless car came to pick me up, I'd cancel the ride.
I remember someone on Facebook that was sticking up for Waymos said something in the comment section. At least a Waymo won't, sexually assault you. It's another word for it, but but it's like you're saying
Yeah.
like at least the Waymo won't. It's like okay,
Oh yeah, because if that
they're
computer system
driverless
malfunctions, if that computer system malfunctions, it could drive you off a bridge. That's so much better.
or trap you in there. Or
Yeah, exactly.
crash or hit someone, you might be liable somehow. I guess I don't
Yeah,
know how it works, but
yeah. But to get back on the topic, like I know one of my favorite things about Spring Creek, the Spring Creek juvenile detention, like they would do like every week these people would come visit us and they'd hold Bible studies with us every week. I really loved that. Like it was pretty like that was the first that was when I first heard about Nikki Cruz, like because
oh yeah,
yeah, they like I got this book from the juvenile detention library called Run Baby Run. I
yeah,
didn't know about Nicky Cruz until the Bible study teachers mentioned him, but then I saw that his book was in the juvenile detention library, so I got the book to read it, and it was a really good book. Like Nicky Cruz, for those of you that don't know who Nicky Cruz was, I think he was a man of Spanish descent. He came to his family came immigrated to New York City when he I forgot how old he was. He was a kid, but he got it like when he got into teenage years, he started gang banging and like ended up in juvenile detention. And but like later on in life, he came to the faith in Christ. And I think if I remember correctly, like a few years ago, I looked up to see what he was doing, and like I think he became a pastor of a church. But yeah, he did a lot of like he was really influenced by David Wilkerson from New York Times Square Church, and like they came out with that. I think it was a movie. It was called Cross or what was it called? Switch and the Crossblade or I don't remember what it was called, but it was a movie about Nikki Cruz's life. Like Nikki
yeah. Like
Cruz,
he was a famous gangster, right?
yeah, he
Yeah,
was a famous gangster. But I remember when I was in a juvenile detention center, I was getting close to discharging to go to the treatment center. And I kept on telling people I'm going to be discharging soon. And the staff members, the other kids were happy for me, but the staff members were like, "You're going to come back." I was like, "No, I won't." And he was like, "Everybody that comes here ends up coming back eventually." And I was like,
yeah,
"I guarantee you, I will never come back here." And I never went back.
yeah.
Like,
That's good.
I never went back. But like,
Yeah,
I remember the first month I was in the treatment center, like during one of the riots, one of my friends, his name was TJ, he was being restrained by this staff member in his room. And I decided to help him. I had these two textbooks in my room, and I picked them up and went to that room where TJ was being restrained, and I chucked the textbooks at the back of that staff member's neck. And then this other staff member named Big Bob came up and picked me up and threw me up against the wall. He was like, "What the hell's your problem?" I was like, when he did that, I got a little scared.
yeah.
Okay, okay, I give up, and I went to my room. But yeah, that like that treatment center was a horrible place.
But I'm sure there's YouTube videos with ex-cons that talk about prison stories that are a lot more exciting than this. On the but but
Well,
I'm
I,
just saying this is part of who we are, like about a mental disorder that we struggle with, and
exactly,
I'm sure it's
yeah,
pretty common. I'm pretty sure it's common among even if you're not saved or not. People going through bipolar and schizoaffective disorder. You do have tendencies to have struggle when you're 14 to 18 and whatnot,
yeah.
and so
Like it is hard enough to deal with life when you're a normal teenager, but when you're a teenager that struggles with mental illness, it like the problems kind of compound on
yeah, it
itself.
magnifies
Yeah,
definitely.
it magnifies. Like it's really like like when I was first diagnosed with mental illness, I felt like a loner. I didn't think that there was anybody else like me. Like even though
Yeah.
my therapist told me it's very common, I didn't believe her because I didn't know anyone else who had a mental illness. Even my own foster brothers seemed normal. Like so, I
Right.
thought I was the only one. I thought I was alone.
Yeah.
Like I remember in that treatment center, there was a time where I forgot. It was like after I was there for like 6 months. All of a sudden, one of my foster brothers that I was living with at the time I started the fire, he came to the treatment center. His name was Scotty, and he came to the treatment center and he was on my unit. And we saw each other and we're like, "Hey, what's up, man?" And like my therapist was like, "Wait, you guys know each other?" And we're like, "Yeah, we were foster brothers." And he was like, "Wait, in the foster home that you started on fire?" And we were like, "Yeah." And then
Yeah.
he looked at Scotty and he was like, "So are you okay with living on the same unit as him?" He was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "But you're essentially his victim." And he was like, "I don't care. It was so long ago." And he was like, "So you
Oh.
don't have any?" He was like, "You don't harbor any animosity towards him. You don't want to get him back." And he was like, "No, it was so long ago. It's whatever." And like, they ended up moving him to a different unit just because they didn't want us. They didn't want us to get into a fight or anything. And I was like, like, we're over that. Like, but they still
Yeah.
moved it to a different unit. It
It's
was
like
very,
they were trying to convince him that he didn't like you.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, all right, so like that's enough of that. Let's go ahead. I picked out this video for us to critique. Like, I thought of you when I saw this video. So we'll go ahead and cover it. This is the only video that we're covering today, by the way. But as you can tell, the title of the video is I felt my husband fell in love with this therapist. And I guess the YouTube channel is called the Dr. John Deloney Show. And for those of you that aren't familiar with him, he does this like call-in show where people call in and they have different situations and he gives them advice. So I wanted us to go over this and I wanted to specifically know your thoughts on the advice he gives. So let's go ahead and start this. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay.
My husband was diagnosed with CPTSD. He went to therapy. He fell in love with his therapist. She fell in love with him.
Hold on, how'd this
Oh,
happen?
wow.
What happened?
He went to therapy, and over time, they both had a connection. There was no therapy actually done in the 4 months he was seeing her.
Oh, shit.
What'd you say?
Oh, I was like, I didn't, when I first heard about this story, I didn't know if the therapist complied with his love advances, but I guess she did.
Yeah, she fell in love with him too.
Yeah, okay.
What's going on? What's going on? This is John with the Dr. John Deloney Show. Show talking about your marriage, your mental health, your relationships, your interaction with other human beings. And if you're like most of us, that has gotten harder and harder and harder the more we are being asked to interface with shiny digital boxes instead of real people. And that makes learning and remembering how to do relationships hard, scary, and fraught with all kind of pitfalls. And that's what this show's about. I'll sit with real people going through real challenges, and we'll figure out what's the next right move. If you want to be on the show, give me a buzz at 1-844-693-3291. That's 1-844-693-3291, or go to johndeloney.com/ask. And real quick, it is the solar eclipse today. And so this is being recorded like a month from, like you'll hear this a month after the eclipse. So if we don't make it, if all the conspiracy theorists are correct, this will be the last beacon sent out into space. But I have a feeling that we're going to be just fine. All right, let's go out to New Haven, Connecticut, and talk to Kathleen. What's up, Kathleen?
Hi, John. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course. Thank you for calling.
My husband was diagnosed with CPTSD.
Yep.
He went to therapy. He fell in love with his therapist. She fell in love with him, and then it was pulled from underneath her because it got too, relational.
I never heard of PTSD before, so I kind of wonder what that is. What CT PTSD is.
I think
'Cause
it's
I know what PTSD is, but I wonder what the CT is.
I think it's uh you know how those I think it's like for people who suffer from PTSD, but they kind of do that identify as cats thing, you know. And I'm just
Whatever.
If you can't do that with a therapist,
No.
how do
Hold on. How'd this happen? What happened?
he went to therapy, and over time they both just had a connection. There was no therapy actually done in the 4 months he was seeing her.
So get this, like he was seeing
no.
this therapist for 4 months, and there was no therapy actually done. They just started falling. They just fell in love with each other.
Yeah, I know why you picked this video out for me because I went through a similar situation where like me and my therapist started seeing each other. But the difference between that and this was I was a single guy and my therapist quote unquote took advantage of me, but I kind of
Yeah.
have trouble with that because it takes two to tango and I went along with it or anything too. So
Yeah, I understand that. I think the reason why it can be said she took advantage of you is because you were in a vulnerable situation, in a vulnerable position, and she exploited your vulnerability.
yeah, I can see that, but
Yeah.
it's not like she was like, "Oh, get with me," and I was like, "No, I won't." It's just like, "You must do it," and I was like,
No,
"Okay," you
yeah.
know. It
You
wasn't
probably
like,
at the time you probably thought you were a willing participant,
yeah.
but I bet you if you were to like take a time machine and go back to that time period to watch how it played out,
Oh,
there was probably very subtle things she was saying and doing to kind of coerce you into falling in love
oh
with her.
yeah, yeah. Because like when I started seeing her, um, it's like it was like every relationship I had up to that point. Like when I started taking medication, I developed ED. And so like whenever I dated someone, they wanted to sleep with me, and then I couldn't, so they break up with me. So I was like either be lonely or heartbroken. That was my two choices. And
Yeah,
when I started messing around with my therapist, um, we figured out that if why don't we tell my why don't we tell my psychiatrist to lower my meds because I've been showing improvement, and then also lower it to 50 milligrams instead of 20, and also chop it up in half so it'll be about 7. So it was a drop from 20 to about 7.5, and
you know, in
and
a certain
so
way,
I went kind of. It was I was stable at first, but we broke up, and then I went absolutely crazy. I could have sued my clinic for this shit.
yeah. In a
And
certain way, I could kind of relate to you. Like I feel like this story is good for me to see too, because even though I never fell in love with a therapist per se, however, I did fall in love with an ex who had a master's degree in psychology, and she was working as a behavioral analyst. Well, I didn't fall in love with her; she manipulated me into thinking I was in love with her. But
mhm.
so I can relate to you on that. And like like my ex, she did, like I said, like your therapist probably did to you, where she did little things to coerce you. My ex
Yeah,
did the same thing. She did little things to coerce me too. And like since she had a master's in psychology, she knew enough to know how to manipulate me. And it was a pretty bad time. The only thing I like, it was kind of like you talked about how you had ED and that caused problems with you and your therapist. I feel like because what at the time when I was with my ex, because of my medication, I had ED too, and I feel like that was God keeping me from actually sinning with her.
yeah.
Like so, I kind of thank God for that, for giving me ED during that time period.
The thing with me though was like I even though like what she suggested when I did like reduce it greatly, like my confidence boosted. I was talking a lot more, and I was able to perform in bed again. And even though at
Yeah.
this time it was after my conversion to Christianity, I was so lonely for over a decade. I was dateless because of this
Yeah.
problem. I was so worried
Yeah.
about it. And then when I did date women after that, it was like, they would always break up with me, and like it was kind of like I wasn't searching out relationships, but they'd end up finding me somehow, and I'd give it a shot, and maybe one of them would give it a, maybe be okay
Yeah.
with it. But it's just that all these relationships always never worked out, and then my therapist happened, and then I thought I was on top of the world, that I could like sleep, start sleeping around again and stuff, and
Yeah.
so, but it was sin, and it led to a lot of more debauchery after we broke up, and I manicked
Yeah.
and I went crazy for a while, and it led to me being in the hospital, and it was terrible in there. So,
Yeah. That makes sense.
So how do I cope with his CPTSD that he was diagnosed with years ago, and the fact that he fell in love with his therapist, and he, to this day, head over heels, like it was like a bad breakup. Like he talks about her in his sleep.
Oh wow! So this dude, this woman's husband is so in love with this therapist that even after they broke up, he's so in love with her that he talks about her in his sleep.
that's sad.
Like that
Because,
is sad.
he should be thinking about his wife like that, not his therapist.
Exactly, not his therapist. But this kind of makes me wonder, like, what did the therapist do that? Like, because she obviously manipulated him, and I'm kind of curious as to how did she manipulate him to a point where he's like obsessing over her this much?
I don't know. I know when you're kind of vulnerable and you cry out to your therapist and you're kind of like revealing everything. I think some women find that kind of appealing if the guy is kind of quote unquote handsome and stuff like
Yeah,
that. And also, for whatever reason, I've noticed with myself that when I'm in a relationship, women throw themselves at me, but when I'm single, they act like I don't exist. It's weird.
no, I agree with that. Like I
So,
noticed that too. When I'm in a relationship, well, when I'm single, women don't pay attention to me, but when I'm in a relationship, women always want to talk to me. And like when I was single, I would talk to a lot of girls and everything, but they weren't interested in me in relationship wise. They just said they see me like a brother. Like, but then like when I'm in a relationship, then women want to talk to me, and it's like, well, it's too late. I'm already taken.
right. Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, what a mess on several fronts. How did this relationship come to light?
It was pulled, like she wasn't a fully licensed. She had a supervisor, and they
Okay.
pulled it out from her.
So the supervisor
'Cause
caught it.
yeah, and she had feelings for him. There was flirting going on, and there was joking, and he said there was really. Once he looked back on it, he goes, there was really no therapy, but he fell hard for her.
Have you
because they
talked?
connected.
Have you talked with the supervisor?
I have not.
I don't believe his story. I do believe, like, the number one no in all of therapy is you can never, don't have intimate or physical or any kind of relationship. The therapist I see now, if I was to see her in a grocery store and we talked about this at the first meeting, I would have to say hi to her first. She'll walk right by me
Oh yeah.
because the anonymity is the cornerstone. You can't do it
That
without
is
that.
true. Like when you have a therapist client relationship, it is pretty much against the law for a therapist to be in a relationship with their client. It's so strict that, like he's saying, if like a client sees his therapist in public, she or he cannot say anything to that person unless that person approaches them first. Because yeah, like that's how strict it is. Like I remember that was one of the first things I learned when I was like in school going for my degree in social work. Like was as a social worker, you have to respect the patient client confidentiality so much that you can't even approach your client in public because it would break that confidentiality.
Yeah, and my therapist definitely didn't follow that rule.
Yeah, I know.
That level of trust.
Yeah.
And therapy is intimate and vulnerable, and you say things out loud that you've never told anybody else. And if somebody's a good listener and a warm, receptive person, then yeah, it's easy to get all tangled up in feelings, but that's the therapist's job, right?
Yeah.
To hold that distance. Clearly, that may not have happened here. But there's something that's not ringing true with the story. And what I would do if there's a part 2 to this, which is how to deal with his infatuation with her. But I would request a meeting with, tell him he wants to meet with the supervisor and request that you come along.
Okay.
And ask to hear the whole story from the supervisor's perspective, because there's something in I'm not buying it.
That's interesting. What do you think about that? Like,
give me a summary of what do you want me to ask
he
answer.
was saying, because he's not buying, he thinks there's more to the story. And he told her that she needs to get her husband to request a meeting with that therapist supervisor, and with her coming along, so she could hear from the supervisor the full story, because he's not buying it. He thinks
because
more to
I'm pretty sure her husband and this therapist, when they were in private sessions, were sleeping around.
probably that's probably why he got obsessed with her.
Yeah, right. So,
do clients sleep with their therapist? Absolutely. The therapists lose their license all the time for that? Absolutely. So does it happen? Yes. But this idea that there was no therapy and she was just, there's something I'm not buying.
Okay.
It sounds like well, I'm completely making up a story here, okay? It feels like that he may have had a great relationship or great interaction with her, or felt comfortable talking to her in a way that he does not feel comfortable talking to you.
Yep.
And
That's
depending
a
on
good
what
point. Like that's probably how it started off. Like, he felt comfortable talking to this female therapist in a way that he's not comfortable talking to his wife, because therapists are supposed to be warm and welcoming, and especially like female therapists tend to be very motherly. So he probably felt like very comfortable talking to her, and she saw that he was vulnerable, and she probably thought he was handsome, so she decided, oh, maybe I can manipulate him into falling in love with me. And like, I can see how that played out.
yeah, and also, if he's keeping secrets from his wife, there might be other women involved that we might not even know about. That, like, maybe she felt sympathetic that he cheated on his wife, and then like he goes, well, if this guy will sleep on his wife, maybe he'll give me a chance, and I can have a relationship with him on the side or something. I don't know. I'm just speculating,
Yeah,
but there seems
that's
to be more
actually
to I than
that's actually a good point.
Yeah.
his CP TSD is, or what it roots from, he might take the feeling of comfort as a feeling of intimacy and love that he does not have with you. So a good therapist would say, hey, the way they practice that interaction so he can take that home to you. And then if you are cold or hard or mean to him or whatever, or exhausted or tired, or then y'all go to therapy together to practice that interaction together.
I like that. I like that. Like, he's saying that maybe they should go to therapy together to practice interacting with one another. And like, that's honestly, I think that's what they should have done to begin with. Like, maybe it wasn't a good idea for him to see this therapist alone. Maybe it would have been a better idea for him to bring his wife along and they could do counseling together. Because obviously there's some kind of friction between them, for him to feel like for him to feel like he's more comfortable telling his therapist his secrets instead of talking to his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's obviously a certain amount of distrust that he has towards his wife. Like, I have a female therapist, but I don't tell my female therapist things that I will never tell my wife. Everything I tell my female therapist are stuff I've already told my wife. So like if he feels like he can't talk to his wife about something, but he could talk to this female therapist about it, that already strikes me as a problem. Like there's obviously some level of distrust that he feels towards his wife for some reason. Maybe she's not as understanding, maybe she's kind of cold towards him or whatever. But the thing is, they really should have been going to therapy together.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Because if there was problems in their relationship, or if there was problems in their marriage, then they should go to dual therapy rather than
Couples
individualistic.
therapy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
But I almost wonder if he is coming up with a story to give him the ability to create distance with you because he doesn't have the courage to say he's not okay in this relationship right now. Is that plausible?
Okay. Yeah, I can. Never thought of it like that.
I can't imagine that the supervisor would not have called him in for a meeting, talked through all the things that happened, sent him directly to another therapist, gone through he would have all that stuff.
Yeah.
That is true. It does seem kind of suspicious if the supervisor knows what was going on between him and his therapist. Why didn't the supervisor call him in, give him a new therapist right away? That kind of makes me think maybe the supervisor was complicit in this whole thing. Like, but that's why I think, like, I don't know. I don't want to say the supervisor was complicit because I don't know. But it is so that's why it is a good idea that this wife goes in and talks to the supervisor herself so she can get the full story of what's going on.
Yeah, it's a shame that it came down to this, but
Yeah.
I don't see this relationship lasting from this point because that guy that isn't in love with his fiance or wife or whoever she is, So I think it's over.
I hope not. I hate
Oh,
hearing
no.
about marriages that fall apart.
Yeah.
Hopefully they could work this out and he could stop loving the therapist and direct his love towards her. But this is interesting. This is we live in a culture that idolizes love, but they don't understand what love is. People think that love is just a fleeting emotion, and like that's why they talk about, oh, I fell out of love or fell in love. They think it's like this emotion, and they feel like, okay, I have these good feelings towards this person, so I must love them. That's not love. Like I love, okay, one of my favorite pastors is Bodhi Bakum, and I love the definition that he gave for love. He said the definition of love is, what did he say? He said it's an action accompanied by emotion that is directed on behalf of the object of its desire. Like love is first and foremost an action. You have to choose to love someone. It's not devoid of emotion, but it's accompanied by emotion that is directed upon the object of its desire. So like that's probably the best definition of love that I can think of. Love is not this fleeting emotion. Like you can't say, oh, this is bigger than the two of us. Like love is direct. It's a choice. Like it's first and foremost a choice. You choose who you love. It's not a fleeting emotion. It's not good feelings or butterflies in your stomach or anything like any of that nonsense. And I feel like this husband, he doesn't know what love is. Like he thinks because he has these good feelings towards his therapist that he must love her, but in reality, he doesn't love her. He's just lusting after her.
Yeah,
Like,
like a good difference in my life would be I was going through some financial troubles in the past, and we had to cancel an episode because of it. And my fiance stuck by me the whole time and was reassuring me the whole time because I was in tears, worrying so much, and I was like saying, "God, why have you forsaken me?" But she was reassuring me the whole time, "I'll never leave you." She even said something to me. I kind of like I was bittersweet because I don't want her saying stuff like this. But she said, "If you became homeless, I will be with you."
It's
Yeah,
like no, I was like, don't say that, please. But it like really showed me that she does love me, and like
yeah,
that's the
it's
difference
good.
between the lust and love because you
Yeah,
can like objectify a woman and love her body and desire to want to sleep with her, but if you don't love her, you're not going to be willing to stick with her through thick and thin.
exactly.
You'll lose her as quick as someone better comes along,
Yeah.
So
That's interesting you say. I mean, like, the first time I really realized that my wife truly loves me was when I had this experience like 2 or 3 years ago where I almost died because of a medication my nurse practitioner put me on. And I ended up with a perforated colon. I ended up in the hospital for 3 months. During that 3 months, I was becoming angry with. I felt my old anger for God rising in me again. I didn't even want to
yeah.
pray to Him, but my wife stuck by me. She visited me in the hospital. She stuck by me through it all. And I remember there was one time, like, 'cause I lost my ability to walk because I was stuck in a hospital bed for so long. So I had to do physical therapy to get the strength back in my legs.
Hmm.
And one day I was like getting so discouraged, I didn't think I'd be able to walk again. And I asked her, I was like, "Would you still love me if I never am able to walk again?" And she said, "Of course." And
Yeah,
like, and that really touched me because like I thought she was gonna leave me if I can never walk again, but she
yeah,
stuck. That's how you know someone truly loves you if they're willing to stick.
exactly.
If they're willing to stick with you through the bad times, because
Yeah.
it's easy to stick with someone through the good times. But if they want to, if they stick with you through the bad times, that's real love right there.
See that's why we get along so well because like we got so many. I mean, we got a lot of similarities. Like we're Christians, we're
Yeah,
schizoaffective, diagnosed with that, and I have a similar story where I it slipped my mind. I had it for a second and then it left me, but it had something to do with what was it? I told my wife something or my fiance something, but I'm sorry, I had it for a second and then it just went away.
no, it's
This
okay.
ain't
It's
gonna be the
okay.
first or last time this happens. It's not the first time either. It happened last week, but I just kind of
Yeah,
have a bad memory. It's so so what can
no,
I
I
do?
understand. Happens to the best of us, brother.
Yeah,
And for him just
Yeah.
to say like, no, we called it. I'm not. There's something. There's. It's just fishy.
Yeah.
One of
Yeah.
my supervisors was on the board of one of the licensure agencies. That's just not how I hear it work. I
I
could be
kind of remember now.
completely wrong, Kathleen. Okay,
You
and that
remember now?
Yeah, like what you were saying reminded me of something. My fiance asked me something. She was like, worried about her hair, and she said, like, if I had an accident with my hair, would you stay with me? If I was bald for temporary, or if I lost my hair, would you stay with me? I was like, absolutely, I'd stay with you no matter what. If you lost a leg, if you became
Yeah,
paraplegic, if you became handicapped, if you had cancer, I'm sticking with you, baby.
yeah.
I'm not going
That's
anywhere.
amazing.
You know?
That's something that the secular world does not understand. Like the secular world doesn't understand how true love really is. Like we see it in the movies where they portray love as two people have good feelings towards each other, they have good chemistry, and they just fall in love and everything's great. But like secular people, they always think that love like they always think that love is only when people are experiencing good feelings towards one another. But true love is more than just good feelings. There's times where I'm pretty sure my wife will tell you there's times where she doesn't feel good feelings towards me, and
Yeah,
but she still, that doesn't mean she doesn't love me. She still loves
right,
me, but sometimes because we're sinful people, we don't feel those good feelings. And when we don't feel those good feelings, the real test is when we don't feel those good feelings, will we still stick it through and still love one another? That's
right,
the real test of whether or not you truly love someone. When those
right.
feelings disappear, are you just going to bounce and leave, or
Yeah.
are you going to stick it through even though those feelings are no longer there?
Like the difference between the relationships with my current fiance and my ex girlfriend that was my therapist was I like one thing, I was not listening to love songs. I wasn't saying I love you to my therapist. It was all about getting laid basically.
That's all it was about.
Yeah.
And like I was taking that over loneliness, but the whole entire point of my life, I asked God so many times, I just want a woman in my life. I don't want to be famous. I don't want to
Yeah.
be rich. I don't want to be extra successful and powerful. I don't want none of that stuff. All I want in my life is a woman. You know, I could
That's
have
a
a little rinky dink apartment, and as long as I have a woman, I will be happy.
That's
And sure enough,
amazing. Like I could totally relate to you on that because from the time I was 16 years old, the only thing I wanted was to be married and have a family. My friends were always talking about they want to get a job as a doctor. They want to they want to go and become a police officer. They want to do this or that. But I, from the time I was 16, said, no, I want to be a husband and have a wife. Like I didn't care if I was poor or if I just wanted a wife. Like I wanted to be a husband. That was my goal since I was 16. Now, I probably at that time I wasn't married. I wasn't marriage material, but that's what I want. I like that's why in every relationship I ever been in from the time I was 19 up until the present, I was always dating with the intention of being married. Like,
right,
fortunately, I was dating women that didn't really want marriage, so it didn't work out. So I say fortunately because finally I met my wife, and that's who I was meant to be with. I wasn't meant to be with these other girls.
right.
Like, when I was with my ex, she didn't love me. That's why anytime there was a bad time, like she would threaten to leave me. So that's how I know she didn't love me because true love means you stick together through the good times and the bad times.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
true. Test of love is like when you're going through the like it says through thick and thin. So when you're going through
exactly,
the when you're going through the parts that are really hard, you know, that's when you know someone really loves you when they stick by your side.
exactly.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
something's fishy.
On top of that, I would like to say, this isn't like relationship wise, but like when it comes to my sisters, I know my sisters generally love me too because of my mental illness, I made things really difficult on my sisters, and like I put them through a whole lot of stuff. And my sisters to this day, they never abandoned me, and they've have always been there for me. So, like that's how I know even my sisters love me because they never abandoned me. Like yeah, there was that incident where um my sister and her husband didn't want to take me in their house when I was in foster care. But I understand why, because they were afraid I was going to be bad influence on their two babies. So so I don't hold that against them. I understand. Like at the time, I got kind of mad, but looking back on it, I understand. I know how I was, and I understand why they denied me. But my sisters, through the whole time I was in foster care, to juvenile detention, to the treatment center, even when I was in the group home, even to the present day, they have always been there for me. They've been a stable rock in my life. So I know my sisters love me.
Right. Yeah, that's good. It's good to have a family that's supportive and loves you. You know, like
Exactly.
I mean, I might not have that totally, other than my fiance, but you know, I got that a little bit. Some people have a lot worse than me, so I shouldn't complain so much about my situation when people have a lot worse than
Yeah.
me.
You have to go through him, but I would get in touch with the supervisor. And so you can hear the story, get the full picture of what's going on here. Part two is none of that really matters. What matters is your husband has told you he's infatuated, in love, has feelings for somebody else.
Mm.
That's what you have to deal with. All this other stuff is a distraction.
Yeah.
How, why, was it at work? Was it my therapist? Was it the lifeguard? Was it somebody at a restaurant? Like, doesn't matter. Your husband's looked at you and said, I have feelings for somebody else, not you.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
That's tough. You know, I mean, we've been together 16 years, married 13.
They've been together for 16 years and married for 13, and now the husband's talking about he's in love with another woman. Like
That's a sleazebag move by the husband, man. I mean, if you're not in love with
exactly.
your wife, you shouldn't be moving in with her and stuff and taking
Yeah, but
advantage of her.
the thing is, once you've been married for over 10 years, like, why would you do it? Why would like you should never do anything to jeopardize your marriage to begin with. But I feel
Yeah.
like once you've been married for at least 10 years, you might as well just stick it through all the way through till you die because 10 years is a long time to be living and being married to someone. I mean, they probably have. I think she said they have kids together, and like
I mean, the
he's
thing is, like, what is he supposed to do, anyways? Is he supposed to leave his wife and risk getting his therapist fired for having an unethical relationship? I mean, there's so many variables that could go haywire with this stuff. Why would you
exactly.
jeopardize yourself like this, man? Just I don't know. He must not love his wife for the whole time. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
that's why you gotta really marry the one you love. And you really
Well,
gotta
that's
do.
why I know this is pretty controversial to say, but I've been saying this for a while now. Unbelievers don't love anyone. Like unbelievers only love themselves. They don't like unbelievers are incapable of love. Actually, I believe the Bible says that unbelievers hate God first and foremost, and they hate other people. Like
Mhm.
they even hate their own spouses and their own children. And until the sad truth is until the Holy Spirit, if the Holy Spirit regenerates this man's heart, until the Holy Spirit does that, he's going to continue to hate his wife. He even hates his therapist. And like once, if the Holy Spirit ever regenerates this man's heart, then he will be capable of true love.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me when you were telling Pine Creek that what did you tell him about
Oh, I told him he hates his wife and
yeah,
children.
exactly
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
What's funny about that was like when I first told him that, he was taken aback, like he was shocked, but then he tried playing it off like it didn't bother him. And
Yeah.
then I forgot about that, and 2 days later, he went and clipped out that segment and made it its own separate video. He titled it "Christian Tries to Trigger Me." And what I find funny about that is obviously you were triggered for you to think about it 2 days later and make it its own video. I
Yeah.
forgot all about that interaction 2 days later, but it was obviously still on his mind 2 days later.
A more honest title would have been Christian Triggers Me.
Yeah, exactly. That'll be more honest, but
You didn't try to.
Pine Creek's incapable of honesty, I think.
Yeah, most atheists are dishonest. Let's just face
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
He says if it was outside of therapy, it wouldn't have happened because he went in looking for help and he became vulnerable because therapy. Um, but I don't know how to deal with that. I
Well,
don't know if
make
I
no
should.
mistake. It's a both and here.
Mm.
He's a grown man who makes choices, and if his story is 100% true, which it might be, he was absolutely taken advantage of.
Yep.
So both things are true, and you can find yourself talking to a therapist, and like so. One of the things I would teach my grad students is you may have to ask about like a common question when you're talking about marriage issues. How often are y'all intimate? How often do y'all sleep together? I asked that question on this show, right? But I'm asking for data. I'm asking for a data point. I don't take the next question, which is, so how is it? See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What's your favorite positions? What's your favorite moves? What's your favorite, like, what are things she doesn't like? Oh, I would love that. See what I'm saying? Now we're in a totally different relationship.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And so I can imagine a guy with complex PTSD who is trying to figure out how to his body,
That's a
his nervous
good
system.
point. Like he's basically saying in a therapy session, it's one thing for a therapist to ask their patients how often they sleep with their spouse, but it's crossing a boundary if the therapist was to say, so how is the sex? What positions does your wife like? That's crossing a boundary. But like by her asking those questions, it could develop these desires in him. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, my wife doesn't like this position," but I would love that position. And then the therapist starts to think that she would like that position, and then it leads to them falling in love. That's such a good point. I like that point.
Yeah, I didn't exactly experience that myself with what happened with me. It was more like I thought we were just friends and like we would just be friends, and I was just trying to get extra therapy on the side. That's why I kind of asked for her number, but we kind of
Yeah.
went on a. It wasn't a date or anything, but it was just kind of like we went to a restaurant, we ate a little bit, and then she was walking me home, and I thought that was going to be the end of it, and then she grabbed my hand. And then I was like,
Wow.
oh, I guess I got a woman now. And, the thing about it is she was 20 years older than me. And, like, even
I
though
was just about to ask you how old was she and how old were
yeah,
you?
I was 36 at the time and she was 56.
Oh wow, so she's robbing the cradle.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
Him to feel safe enough to do relationships. I can imagine him just answering the questions before him, and you get a voyeuristic grad student who just drags him underwater. I could see that happening.
Yeah.
And also, the moment he says, I'm in love with her, is the moment as a grown man he has to say, I don't know what kind of relationship this is, but it's too far. So it's both and, right? What
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about is the aftermath, because he has continued. He doesn't see her anymore. Is that correct?
Correct.
Does he not text her, call her, email her?
Nothing.
Are you certain?
As far as I know, yes.
What does that mean?
Or, I mean, he says he's not, but
Yeah, that works out
and he's
good.
talking to another therapist about it.
Okay.
He's talking
So-
to another therapist about this. Hopefully, that's not another female therapist because, this guy obviously What if if he's talking to another female therapist? What's going to prevent him from catching feelings for her and supposedly falling in love with her now? Hopefully, he's not talking
Yeah.
to another female therapist.
What's so crazy about this whole situation is his ex therapist is now my therapist, and my ex therapist is now his therapist.
Whatever.
Oh, do you want to stay married to this guy?
I do.
Does he know that?
Yes.
Does he want to stay married to you?
Not sure.
Okay. You need to get an answer to that
Wow.
question.
Oh, that's sad.
I've asked him, and he said he's not sure because he doesn't know who he is because he's trying to figure out who he
Yeah,
He's
is.
that's
not
nonsense.
sure if he wants
That's
to stay
nonsense. We only
married
find
to
out who we
her.
actually.
Wow. All right, I'll end that there. I'll post the video in the description box below, so if anybody wants to watch the full video, they can. Do you have any final thoughts on that video?
Well, I know when you're single and lonely and your therapist comes on to you, it might be tempting to get in a relationship with him or her. But you know what? If they hit on you, I suggest you report that immediately before it leads
Yeah.
to trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Report that immediately to their supervisor because that's first off, I know you don't like it when I say this, but what your therapist did to you was akin to basically rape. Because she's abusing her power.
Yeah.
It's definitely if you're in a situation where your therapist is coming on to you, report them immediately because that is definitely inappropriate behavior that a therapist can display towards a client, and it's very unethical. It's very unethical, and actually, therapists therapists and social workers have certain guidelines that they have to abide by, and it's very serious if a therapist or social worker violates those standards. It is extremely serious. So if you're in a situation where your therapist or social worker or anyone in power over you, if they're taking advantage of their power over you, report. Don't be afraid to report them. They might threaten you to be quiet, but don't listen to them. Report them immediately to their supervisor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're called
All right.
Batman.
What?
They're called Batman.
Yeah, they're called bad men.
Batman.
Oh, Batman, whatever. Oh, call Batman. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's funny. All right, well, that concludes this week's episode of Christian Schizo Rants. Please stay tuned for next week's episode on Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll have new topics to talk about then. And thank you very much to the viewers who watched this stream. Thank you to the people that are going to watch the playback to this stream. And thank you, Joseph McDermott, for joining me for another wonderful episode. And if you like this video, please like the video because it helps the video circulate in the algorithm. Share this video with someone you feel like needs to hear this video, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. If you're not already subscribed, I don't know what you're doing. Please subscribe to this channel.
Yeah.
And if you've been blessed by the Christ Centered Mental Health Ministry, please consider supporting the ministry either through Patreon, Venmo, or Cash App. If you support the ministry for $5 or more on Patreon, or $10 or more through Cash App or Venmo, I'll send you some of my books as a special token of my gratification. All right, so that's all. Like, thank you very
And
much.
if I know normally we watch more than one video, but if we get enough donations from other people, we'll go to the premium so we don't have to deal with ads.
Exactly, so you don't have to deal with ads. We walked out this time; we didn't see any ads, but yeah. All right. Have a good night. God bless you all, and stay strong in the Lord.
God bless.